What's going on, guys? Welcome to the very first episode of the BoxInOne Podcast, a basketball podcast where you get everything, daily breakdowns, trade news, biggest storylines of the season, whether it's team or individual players, just commentary on the game in general. If you want it, we got it. Now, I'm here with my two co-hosts, Royce Chand and Daniel Robles. Obviously, BoxInOne is a five-player defensive scheme, in basketball. So our other two co-hosts, Marcus Aguilar and Samajai could not make it this week for the first episode, which sucks, but they will be here in full force for episode 2. Now, before we break down and dive into really the meat and potatoes of today's episode, I do want to give you guys a quick season recap of last season. Wire to wire, it was Boston Celtics dominance. Tatum performed, Brown performed, both did well in the playoffs, which was the first time the Jays really put the pieces together. We also saw a lot of more not as talked about storylines as the championship, but still big moves. Klay Thompson departing from the Golden State Warriors, the arrival of Anthony Edwards eliminating Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. We also saw Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving as a duo put the pieces together. We saw the elimination of the Denver Nuggets in the second round. And what I found interesting about that, actually, that was the fourth time since a champion has won since 2021 from the Bucks to now where they got eliminated the next year in the second round. So just something to watch out for as well. But as a Boston Celtics fan, I hope that doesn't happen, but we're going to get into that today in this episode as well. The first thing I want to ask both you guys, and I'm going to start with you, Royce, off-season, right? What was the off-season move that either stood out to you, the move that you wish maybe a team had made, or just the biggest or the worst move from off-season? What stood out to you?
I think it's very hard to talk about the offseason without the elephant in the room, which was Cat to the Knicks. Not only was, I think it's what the Knicks needed to push them into the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference, it was also just one of the most surprising trades I've ever seen. Not even for this offseason. I think the past maybe 10, 15 years, one of the craziest trades ever. And also on the Timberwolves side, the first time making it to the Western Conference Finals in 20 plus years since the KG era, and you split your team up after one season, to bring in a playoff choker or a playoff, whatever the opposite of a playoff riser is in Julius Randle. I think it was just a bit of a head scratching move from the Timberwolves side, and also a bit of just a surprising move in general.
And then same question for you, Daniel. What do you think was the biggest off-season move that really stood out to you?
So I was talking about this with Royce earlier. Like, I believe it was the same thing. Most shocking, in my opinion, was Knicks Timberwolves trade. But I mean, if you want to talk about more to that, I feel like Royce, we were talking about how you did talk about since the Timberwolves era, that was the first time they broke up that team after their first year. I think we could also talk about, per se, the Knicks. Like, the Knicks, they had that Nova squad, that Nova Knicks squad, and they just blew them up before it had even occurred. So, in my opinion, it was questionable, but the Knicks did win the trade overall because they do have a big man in Cat. First time, as Royce was talking about earlier, since Julius Irving, my apologies.
Patrick
Ewing, I'm sorry. Oh my goodness, that was such a brain fart. But yeah, just overall, that was a great trade by the Knicks. But also, besides that trade, I did like the offseason move of Paul George going to the 76ers. I think that's a great fit for them. And I was talking to Royce about it before we did start, and how kind of, in a way, like, it's an now or never for the 76ers. And
I guess to stay on Paul George for a little bit there, I think the thing that's interesting to me about the Philly and Paul George move, or at least the issue I kind of have with it, is that you have a guy in Joel Embiid who needs the ball. He needs the ball to score. Obviously, the ball's gonna be in his hands most possessions. You have a guy in Tyrese Maxey now who flourished without James Harden, and we saw how capable he was as a second option. So a question I have for you both: how do you think Paul George is gonna fit in? Because now you have 3 score-first players, and we've seen even with the Phoenix Suns, right? Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker. We see this new big 3 of specifically or primarily score first guys when one of them isn't a great facilitator, doesn't tend to work out. So what could Philly possibly do differently in order to break that trend?
Well, I think Paul George was the perfect co-star he could get. Um, in this point in his career, he's okay with taking a back seat. We've seen the last few years with him with Kawhi. He hasn't had to be the number one option, and I think he's flourished in that role. He was a couple-time All-Star in LA, and we still saw him turn it up. When Kawhi got injured in 2021, and he became that number one option. He can prove that he can still be that number one option. But I think now when you have a guy like Maxey, you have a guy like Embiid, all Paul George is going to have to do is come in, defend the best perimeter wing or whoever, make a few shots, cut to the rim. I think there's a lot of less pressure on him for him to be able to lean on guys like Embiid and Maxey. It's going to work well. It's kind of what they wanted to do with Butler, just in a more, obviously Paul George is probably the more better offensive player. But yeah, I think they couldn't have asked for a better, more perfect fit than Paul George.
And I think for me, like, kind of just adding on what Royce was saying, like, overall, Paul George doesn't have to do a whole lot. I feel like, in my opinion, like, he could be a solid defender, he could be a solid role player, and just be that veteran guy that I feel like they need besides Joel Embiid. I mean, obviously you have Tyrese Maxey, who is still a young player, who is 23 years old. He still needs that development. He's already a great player, but having Paul George is just an overall asset that they needed, and it's perfect. And as I was saying earlier, in terms of the moves, this move kind of guarantees them to be at least, I think, top 4, top 5 in the Eastern Conference. Okay. And if it's like I said, it's a now or never for them. They kind of have to, I guess, push past what they've always been, I guess you can say, scared of, in the Eastern Conference Finals. And if they can't get there, then I see that as a failure of an offseason for them.
Right. I actually do agree with that. I think, while I am interested to see how it works with Paul George, I think this is their biggest move in order to get over the hump. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get into standings a little bit later in terms of how the Eastern Conference unfolds. Staying on another Eastern Conference team in terms of all-season moves, the Boston Celtics just won the championships, but they didn't really seem to do anything other than retain. But at the same time, I think that could be looked at as equally as important as making a big move. But when you look at the Boston Celtics roster, you've got the Knicks with Cat now. You've got the Bucks who got Gary Trent. They've got other pieces on the bench now. You've got the Sixers with Paul George. Do you still think the Boston Celtics have done enough in the offseason, even if it's just retaining all their guys, in order to still be the Kings of the East?
I think so. Yeah, and like you said, they didn't add anything, but they still kept everyone. And last season, they were miles ahead of everyone. No one was really laying a finger on them. Even when they got to the Eastern Conference Finals, they got to the finals, there was no one was a match for them. And I think even though the moves that people have made, like PG, Cat, or whatever, I still think no one's really bridged the gap enough. I think maybe the Knicks could take them to 7, or the Sixers could. But like you said, the best thing they could do was keep everyone. And they did that.
Yeah, I agree with like what Roy said as well. Just overall, just keeping them, like, they didn't really have to do much in the offseason. That's also my own opinion. Like, they didn't have to do much. They had that core, and if they're able to keep it, and like Roy said, just be miles ahead of other teams, then they could possibly win back to back, even possibly a 3-peat if they can.
Yeah, as a Boston fan, I gotta say, if Tatum got a 3-peat, I'm pushing some crazy agendas. I'm pushing some very.
I don't know, Joaquin.
I'm pushing some very crazy.
You've already pushed too many agendas.
No. Listen, right? No, let me cook real quick. Jason Tatum. This is a sidebar, but Jason Tatum with 3 rings, right? Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown with 3 rings. This whole narrative that we're done with the '80s, right? I'm ready to put Tatum over Bird as the best Celtic of all time. If he 3-peats, I'm ready. I'm doing it.
That's kind of crazy.
That's very crazy.
But he's 3-peating in a better era. I think Larry Bird could still be dominant in today's NBA, because when you look at guys like Luka and Joker who still play slow and be dominant, they can do it. But if we're just talking about a 3-peat in today's NBA with the health, with the trades, if Tatum gets it done and he's the number one option, He's the greatest Celtic of all time. I don't think that's crazy to say.
That's a whole nother combo.
That,
But then you got to talk about Bill Russell as well. He's still got
that too.
8
Yeah.
chips to go.
Yeah.
I don't want to
That
stay
man
on
has
this.
11 championships. Remember that.
I don't want to stay on it too long. As much as I love Bill Russell, is what he means or what he means for the game of basketball. We got to let go of some of the segregation chips. We got that's a term Samajai Henry told me. You got to let go of the segregation chips. And we also got to remember, right? Bill Russell was the best player, but if you look at how deep his team was when the league was still developing, it was like if you put the 2017 Warriors back there and you gave them, I don't know, MPJ off the bench, Sam Jones, you gave them so many different pieces. Obviously, you're going to get 11 rings. I'm not taking away 11 rings is still the most we've ever seen. And I think Bill Russell could still be dominant, but I don't think Bill Russell would have that same success in any other era.
Yeah, they had like all the Hall of Famers on their team as well.
Yeah, like every single guy on that squad was Hall of Fame. Tatum doesn't. Peyton Pritchard, I don't know if he's Hall of Fame yet. That's not everybody on the current Celtics.
Sam Hauser Hall of Fame.
Sam Hauser. I guess that is interesting though. Like role players getting rings that's a whole other different conversation. But yeah, Tatum three-peats, Jaylen Brown three-peats. 1 and 2 best Celtics of all time are going to be Tatum and Brown. That's how I look at it.
That's kind of crazy.
That's how
Starting
I look
off
at
strong in the first episode, walking.
Pivoting to the West Coast now in terms of off-season moves. Daniel, we're gonna dive into your Lakers. You know, you got a new coach, you got some new blood on the team. You got Dalton Connect 4, you got Bronny James, and I'm gonna start with you here, Daniel. How do you feel the Lakers are now compared to last year in terms of the rest of the West in order to make a deep run at the playoffs and possibly get back to their championship winning ways?
You know, I just think overall, like, they had a great... No, well, I wouldn't say great offseason. It was kind of a mid-offseason. But overall, like, getting rid of Darvin Ham, who always has his hands in his pocket. We were talking about that last night. Yeah, I mean, JJ Redick, I feel like he could be either a Steve Nash type of coach, or he'd be kind of like a Jason Kidd type of coach. So I feel like we're right in the middle in terms of the head coaching. I feel like he is doing his job very well, using LeBron right, using all the players so far in the preseason. Hit the young stars. I think he's doing well as a coach as of right now. We'll see as the season starts and how his changes within the starting lineups are. I like his idea how he stated that he doesn't want to switch it up as much as how Darvin Ham was, and if they continue to do. And if he can continue to do that when he is coaching, I feel like we're going to be a solid team in the West. We're definitely not going to be top 5, but we probably could be between the bubble of a play-in tournament or possibly like 6th or 7th seed. That's my opinion.
Okay.
For sure. In terms of the offseason moves for players, we didn't do a whole lot as a lot of the marketing teams that see, or not marketing, but a lot as NBA community has seen as a whole. All we did really was just re-sign LeBron. In the draft, it did good, though. I liked the picks with Dalton Connect and even Bronny James. Although it shows that Bronny James hasn't been doing the greatest, I feel like overall this past game last night against the Warriors, which we did lose, but he showed some solid standpoints. Like, he had 17 points. He had 3 steals. He's showing that he's a great defender with those 3 steals. And I think he could be just solid within that. But as I was saying earlier in last night talking with you, Joaquin, and also just right now as a whole, I feel like even if he isn't on a 2-way contract, he definitely should be down at the G League. Not saying that he's a bad player, but he definitely still needs some reps in the big leagues, and the G League is still the big leagues in my opinion. And just overall, like him as a whole, he is a 2nd round pick. The media makes him feel like he's an Alex Starr type of player. And when in reality, he's the 55th pick in the NBA draft. So people gotta, I guess, chill on him. Yeah, he's LeBron's son. It is nepotism, in my opinion. But you gotta let the kid work first. But in terms of our 1st round pick, Dalton Connect, I think that was a steal, one of the biggest steals of the draft. Like, people can call me biased all they want, but the way he's been performing against the Suns a few days ago, he put up 33 points. I know I believe it was Royce that said that, yeah, when the starting lineups do come, he might not put up those numbers, but he is still going to put up a few numbers. I think maybe 13 per game. He's going to be solid. I think he's going to be a solid player. He is a great 3-point shooter. So I think as the season goes on, we will see. But I think we had a solid draft. Off season could have been a lot better, but in terms of the Lakers as a whole, I think we got better as a team, but we could have done a lot more for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I agree with most of what Daniel said. I like the Dalton Connect pick. I think he did fall further than he should have. Because when you look at guys who've spent 4 years in college, a lot of them do go. Like the most recent example I can think of is Ochai Agbaji. He was a Final Four most outstanding player. He went to the Jazz in the Donovan Mitchell trade, and he was on a rebuilding team. I think when you have a guy who's been through the mud, they know how to win at different levels, and you put him on a team like the Lakers, that's going to serve the team better, and not only the team better, but the player. We saw what Dalton connected in summer league. We're seeing what he's doing in preseason. He's just going to shoot, play good defense, rebound the ball. And I could see him become a starter as well later in the season. Rui's on the hot seat. D'Lo's on the hot seat. Even Austin Reeves on the hot seat. He's always getting torched on defense. But other than the Lakers, I don't know. They kept Bron happy. They drafted Bronny. We'll see what's gonna happen with Bronny.
Yeah.
And I think just going on with like LeBron, like I feel like keeping him happy shouldn't be the biggest agenda. Yeah, he is your star player, probably the greatest player you've had since Kobe, but like it's questionable. Like LeBron, yes, he is great at his age. He's like 39, I believe, gonna be 40 soon. But like at the end of the day, I feel like Genie Bus should start looking into the future, not what's happening right now. Yes, obviously we do want to win a championship this year, and can we? Maybe, maybe not. But we have to see as the season progresses. But they gotta have to focus on the young guys, and I feel like Dalton Connect is kind of that starting point, in my opinion. If they can build around Dalton Connect and kind of stay with that young core and stay with the solid role players they have. Yes, Rui is on the hot seat, but I feel like with JJ Redick as a head coach, he's gonna get more minutes, he's gonna get more reps, and I think he's gonna be a better player.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot. If we're talking hot seat, I think players like Cam Reddish are definitely on the hot seat. That's one of the players I feel like are, and I think Austin Reeves as well. Like, yeah, he's always getting blown past by when he's defending a solid, faster player than him. So yeah, I think that's my point as a Laker fan. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess in the words of Patrick Beverly, I guess a lot of those Laker guards are cones. But I do think Dalton Connect is kind of like the Michael Porter Jr. archetype. He's a guy who can catch and shoot. He's a guy who can also create his own shot, defend well when needed. I believe he's 6'8". He's got a long wingspan as well. So he's definitely a guy that can add some more depth to the Lakers bench. I also think staying on Rui Hachimura for a little bit, I think people forget how well he played in the Nuggets series. Not the last one, but the first time against the Nuggets, how well he played against Nikola Jokic, how well of a defender he was, how versatile he was. And I just think Darvin Ham kind of pulled the curtain from under him because he wasn't getting those reps as much the next season. That could have really helped and improved his game. Again, in the Memphis series as well in 2022, he played incredibly well. Same thing with the Lakers series. I mean, he was on a heater, not 2022, 2023. So that was the season before last. He was on a heater against the Golden State Warriors as well. One of the most annoying things I had to deal with as a Warriors fan was seeing that we had nobody to stop Rui from going to the cup. So I think JJ Redick is somebody that is going to understand. This is obviously Bron's team. This is AD's team. But as Bron dwindles down at this point, Bron is arguably the greatest player of all time. He has nothing else to prove. He's still going to go out there and win. But winning does not, in my opinion, winning is not going to mean more to LeBron than just seeing Bronny flourish. Because he's done enough. He's comfortable taking a back seat now. And I think JJ understands that. And he's going to understand that the future is now, like you said, you've got Dalton, you've got Austin, you've got Rui, you've got these guys who have shown when they're given the green light, they can perform. It's just they didn't get that same green light from Darvin Ham. And I don't think that's a mistake JJ Redick is going to make. So are the Lakers like a championship contender? I don't think so. I mean, we've seen LeBron do crazier things. We said the same thing about 2018 Bron, and they went all the way to the finals. I don't know if Bron has that in the tank, but this is Captain Lamerica we're talking about. So I don't, I don't know, man. After that Olympics run, I really can't put a cap on Braun's skill set with his age. I can't put a cap on it. But I think the West is too deep. And staying on another team in the West here, I think an underrated move that didn't get talked about a lot as I'm kind of looking at the sheet here. I think DeMar DeRozan to the Kings. I want to get your guys' thoughts on that because I feel like it's a move on paper that like it's not like it's kind of mid, but I think that closing lineup. You got the Fox Sabonis pick and roll. You got Monk. You got Murray. You got Alex Len. Now you put DeMar DeRozan on top of that, kind of that 3-level score they were missing. I think that's why they couldn't beat the Golden State Warriors in 2023. They just simply were missing that last push. And then on top of that, they also I don't think the Kings really had. You got Malik Monk, but they never really had like a straight up like 6'6" to 6'9" wing type of player. DeMar DeRozan fills a lot of gaps for this Kings team. So what do you guys think about that move?
I'm kind of torn on two sides. I think that it was a good move for the Kings. With the space that they have to make a move, I think DeMar DeRozan is, a big name for a market like Sacramento that doesn't usually get, big name free agents or trade. People don't want to be traded to Sacramento. I think we saw in the playoffs Sabonis, he couldn't hit a shot outside the paint. And when you put all that pressure on Fox, as great as he is, as great as he's becoming a shooter and a facilitator, when you have a guy like DeMar, one clutch player of the year, yes, he's a playoff downer, but he's that guy that you can rely on during the regular season to, produce these moments. And especially for a Kings team that their whole shtick is offense. They're not asking DeMar to come in here and guard like Keegan Murray or anything like that. But on the second half of it is that you're bringing in a guy who's known for the mid-range. This dude refuses to take any threes, and you're bringing him into a system that's purely run by pace and threes. And DeMar, he likes to take up the shot clock, take a mid-range, and you're bringing him to an offense where the whole thing is threes, and this guy barely takes a 1-3 a game or makes 1-3 a game. But I did like, because the room that they have, I mean, it was either him or Brandon Ingram, and they basically gave up nothing. Chris Duarte, who doesn't play for Sacramento, so I think it was a good move for them in terms of name brand.
I liked Royce's idea in terms of name brand. Like I didn't really think of it that way, but yeah, I just want to compliment on that in terms of name brand, but also just like I feel like the move itself, like as a veteran player who has been on the Raptors, who has been on the Spurs, it's been on plenty of teams, I suppose as well, but I feel like Sacramento, them being still like a solid young team, at least from what I know, they can continue to develop or kind of learn from his skill set as well, learn from his experience as a team, and be a leader. I think overall, DeRozan can definitely be a leader for that team, and as a skill set for his playmaking as well. I feel like, yeah, it's questionable because, as Royce would say, like Sacramento's offense is heavily relying on fast pace and threes. So it's going to be something that's going to be in discussion as we continue episodes with these podcasts about how his playmaking is with the Kings. But yeah, overall, I think it's a solid move. But I think at the same time, it's like what could he do? Like we have to wait to see if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think DeMar is a good 3-level scorer in terms of he can score. Like, he can shoot threes. He can make threes. We've seen him make threes in the clutch. But the problem that Royce brought up is the three-point is not integral to his game. He's going to go down the court. It's kind of like the guys you see at LA Rec, like with the Kobe jersey on. Like, I feel like DeMar plays at a much higher level. But obviously, like, his game is kind of modeled after, MJ, Kobe, mid-range, little spin fade, get the midi going, either go to the cup. And in a system that's so fast-paced, and this is a weird segue, but it kind of, if I'm going to transition to the WNBA for a little bit, I think Alyssa Smith, who was on the Indiana Fever, she was like a post player who needed the ball in her hands a lot of the time. But even though she's a great player, Larissa or Alyssa Smith, forgive me if I get your name wrong, the thing that she didn't have, she couldn't keep up with the fast pace of Indiana, because Indiana, their bread and butter, Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, shooters everywhere. Worst case, Aaliyah Boston gets the rebound. She goes up, takes it to the cup. The problem with Smith was she needed the ball in her hands in order to make plays, and she would slow down that offense. So we have to see whether DeMar DeRozan is now going to become a much faster player. And later in his career, I don't know if that's possible just because your game is your game, I think, for like 13, 14 seasons now. I don't expect you to completely change it, but it's going to be interesting maybe if Mike Brown uses DeMar DeRozan more as a bench unit, maybe uses him more with Malik Monk, that kind of 1-2 punch off the bench. So again, that's just going to be interesting. We're going to transition here to what team and player has the most to prove, but obviously there were other moves we didn't talk about. OKC getting Hardenstein and Caruso. I think that was great moves for them. They filled up and covered all their bases. Mavericks also got Najee Marshall and Klay Thompson, who we're going to talk about in a little bit here. So a lot of great moves were made in the offseason, and I think the funny thing about Cat to the Knicks, that was our biggest move. We all agreed on that, is that we also forgot the Knicks got Miles Bridges. Excuse me, Mikal Bridges, not Miles Bridges. This same, not Miles Bridges, but Mikal Bridges, this same offseason, which I think in a lot of people's eyes pushed them as that 1-2 with Boston. Now you put Karl Anthony Towns on top of that. If they can all play together, obviously you lose DiVincenzo, which I think is probably a bigger loss than Randall, seeing what you get back at Karl Anthony Towns, just perimeter defense. But if the Knicks are able to stay healthy and they are able to have a working game plan, and hopefully Tom Thibodeau doesn't work these guys to the ground, I think New York does have a great shot at a championship this year. I just want to put that out there on the podcast right now. Transitioning, though, in your guys' opinion, I mean, every season, everybody's going to play with something to prove. But based on what you've seen from last season, what team or player, and it can be anyone. It can be a role player. It can be, Klay Thompson, who was aforementioned. It can be a team. Who do you think in this season has the most to prove?
For me, it starts with the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo. They've obviously won a championship in this decade, only one of the 4 teams to do that. But when you're looking back on the run since 2021, what have they done? Giannis has struggled to stay healthy. He's great during the regular season. I think he probably should at least get one more regular season MVP. But when you look back on what they've done in the playoffs, they got swept by the Heat. Giannis has been injured. And the other thing, you traded Drew Holiday, who was the heart and soul of your defense. You trade him to the Celtics, and he goes in and wins a championship with the Celtics. And when you're banking on your stars who are entering close to near the end of their primes, Dame's regressing. We've seen that this season. He's still a great player, but we've seen that he's regressing. Chris Middleton can't stay healthy. He just had surgery again in the offseason. Giannis, one of the best players in the world, one of the best players ever. He was on GOAT trajectory after he won those first couple MVPs. But now you're looking like Giannis has been talking very eerily. He's saying, I might leave. They might have to trade me if I can't win anything. So when you look at, you have that 1-2 punch of Dame and Giannis, the fact that they're barely, they haven't made it out of the first round. I think they need to at least make an Eastern Conference final run this season.
And I think for me overall right now it's the Denver Nuggets. Yeah, the Denver Nuggets won a title a few years ago, but I think just overall for them, with the little bit of offseason moves they made, only really signed Westbrook, which is a good move in my opinion. But overall, we got to question Jamal Murray as well. Jamal Murray is a great playoff performer, but I feel like it's only against the Lakers. That I'm not saying that as a Laker fan, but it's been proven. We see how he is, even in the Olympics. Yeah. But overall, I feel like he has a lot to prove in terms of him being a player outside of his playoff performance with the Lakers. And definitely just overall as a whole to see where he can take his team. Because right now it looks like it's a Jokic team, and it's going to be like that for a while. But I want to see what he can do if, not wishing this on him, but per se, let's say Jokic does get hurt. We want to see how he's able to lead the team as a whole and how he's able to develop more into his game. But besides that, I have one more. I think overall it's just the Mavericks. They made it to the NBA Finals this past year. They already proved that, but we want to see how they can prove being in a stronger West now. At least that's what it looks like for me. But that's it.
Yeah, I think those are all great picks. I think the Mavericks more specifically for me, I think Kyrie and Klay have the most to prove. I think Kyrie played incredible against Minnesota. He played out his mind. He did all right against the OKC Thunder, but again, the Thunder, that's going to be a hard team to score on for Kyrie when you've got guys like Lou Dort, who can clamp you up. But he dropped off in the finals. We do have to accept that. And that's the first time I've really seen Kyrie since Boston, ironically, drop off in a playoff series. So for him, I think it's just about being consistent throughout the playoffs. That's the biggest thing, because Clippers, he played good. Thunder, he was kind of off. Timberwolves, he played amazing. And then when you needed the most against Boston, he dropped off. And Klay Thompson, I just think I think he can fit in really well with this Maverick system. I just think he has to get over trying to prove to everybody he's back and just accept where he is. He's still like a top 200, top 100. Not top 100, but definitely top 200, top 150 player in the NBA. He's still a guy who can be a knockdown shooter. I mean, I remember last season he had a couple 50 balls when Steph was out. So when he has the green light, he can still go. He just has to accept that, it's not going to be the same level like 2016, 2017, really anything pre-Achilles and ACL. Two crazy injuries to come back from, and kudos to him that he's still playing with this fire. But he has to accept himself as a third, as a fourth option, and really kind of settle into his role. I think staying on the Bucks and the Nuggets here, two former NBA champions, the thing about the Nuggets is they kind of lost everyone. I think that's the thing about the Nuggets that people forget. They lost Jeff Green after they won the championship, and even though Jeff Green is 37, I kind of like to call him the LeBron of role players with how long he's been in the field. Jeff Green would have been a great third big or second big even for Jokic to have when the Timberwolves can throw out you Cat, Gobert, and Naz Reid, because that Naz Reid made a huge difference for the Nuggets. It was a third body. They were triple teaming him. It's a third body you can throw on Jokic. Having a guy like Jeff Green to stop some of the bleeding would have been big. You also lose one of your best playmakers in Bruce Brown, who I believe is on Toronto right now, right? Toronto or the Pacers? I think he's on Toronto. Yeah, he's on Toronto. He got traded from Indiana, I believe. You've got a guy in Bruce Brown who was able to make plays and kind of pick up for Murray's slack. I'm not saying Jamal Murray was a slacker by any means, but Bruce Brown is a guy who could lock up D'Angelo Russell, who could lock up Austin Reeves, especially in those Lakers series. Bruce Brown's perimeter defense showed. And in a Western Conference where you've got guys like SGA, Luka, Kyrie, Fox, even DeJounte Murray now in the Western Conference on the Pelicans, which is a move that it's kind of hard because we just don't know how well they fit. I feel like they got four guys, but they don't really know how they mesh well together yet. I think that when you have a Western Conference that's just expanding in firepower in the guard position, and then you get rid of Bruce Brown, that's a decision that's going to bite you. And then with Dame and Giannis, I felt this way the moment the trade was made. I feel like they're two great players. I don't think they're a duo. Because if I compare them, right, or we compare them to like Jokic and Murray, for example, Jokic and Murray complement each other very well because of the playmaking Jokic has, the gravity he has. Murray can catch and shoot. Dame doesn't have the playmaking to utilize the gravity he has, and Giannis doesn't have the playmaking ability. He's not a bad playmaker, but I don't think he has the playmaking ability to utilize the gravity he has. And I also don't think Dame is like a Curry in the sense that Steph Curry is very off ball. So he can move around the court, 23 seconds, get open, shots going off in 0.5 seconds. That's a bucket. Most defenders can't keep up with that, and I think Steph really learned to do that when KD was there, when he had to take that step back. Dame has always been the number one guy, and the ball's got to be in his hands to make a play. If people are going to double Dame on Portland, what's he going to do? Swing the rock to maybe McCullough, maybe when they had Norman Powell, when they had Jerome Grant, or even Nurkic, who was actually an underrated player, I feel, on that Portland team. He's going to find those guys with his gravity. Dame is not used to being number two, and on top of that, he's actually not used to having to have his impact be felt without the ball. That's not something he's really good at. So I think in order for them to actually become a duo and a dynamic duo in the East, as Royce was saying, and really just get out the first round, honestly, because like you said, they also lost Drew Holiday, and in that Dame trade, you also lose Devon Carter and Grayson Allen, who, for what they worth, were also great perimeter defenders. You lose all three of those at the same time. Your op now has Drew Holiday. You're losing to the Indiana Pacers. Halliburton is like mean mugging you, doing the Halliburton was doing the Dame time. Like this is, and that's not a shot at Tyrese. I mean, Tyrese is an incredible young guard, but I don't think anybody expected the Pacers to roll through the Bucks. Obviously, there were injuries, but they rolled through the Bucks. I believe they were like 4-1 or 5. I think 4-1 against the Bucks in the regular season. They just had them figured out. And when you give away your future in order to win in the now, and you still can't win, and then you've got Giannis like kind of gaslighting the organization, like, they don't want me. He's trying to like gaslight them to get a trade.
Yeah, they should trade me.
Yeah. Like when your star is like already kind of 1 foot out the door, because I don't think Milwaukee has enough firepower. I think Gary Trent is a good piece off the bench, but I don't think Milwaukee has enough firepower to get a championship. they're going to get a championship if Dame and Giannis play the best basketball we've seen them play. And I think Giannis is going to do that as long as he doesn't get hurt. But if you don't want Giannis to get hurt, Dame, you can't be 21, 22 points. You got to be 25, 26 points per game. Minimum. That's what we need from you.
I think like you said, they're two great players, but they're not a great duo. Is their offense was more like, okay, give the ball to Dame, let him rock out for 2-3 possessions, and then give it to Giannis, and then what he do is run and dunks. Like they're not utilizing the pick and roll. You know, Dame's not going to be stand in the corner like Chris Middleton. He's not going to have the impact that Drew Holiday had on defense. So I think they're more is like, okay, you do what you need to do, then I do what I need to do, which isn't a great recipe for winning a championship.
Yeah,
thank you. But just like it, as the season is gonna go on, it goes off to know like that trade with Damian Lillard, sent him to the Portland Trailblazers, then he got waived off, and then he got signed to the Celtics. I think that just showed that was just overall, it wasn't a good trade. It was great on paper, but when you have that team, like you guys have said, like where they're kind of like, oh, it's my turn, then it's not going to work. And and that proved this season. And it just shows, like, even like on defense, like Dame isn't the greatest defender, and we know that. And when you lose a great defender like Drew Holiday, who practically, I feel like, in my opinion, carried them besides Giannis in terms of defensive play, then you lose all of that. I wouldn't say momentum, but you lose all of that willpower that you had.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how the Bucks kind of retool themselves. I think you guys honestly hit the nail on the head. I was going to say Milwaukee or the Nuggets. I think you've also got teams like, and Royce, you're going to appreciate this one as I look at this little scripture. I feel like the Cavs do have something to prove. I don't think they have anything to lose. You re-signed Donovan Mitchell, but I think the Cavalier experiment, you've got all these young guys. I'm waiting for them to take the leap. Because I think on paper, that starting five, you've got Garland, you've got Mitchell, you've got Mobley, you've got Allen. Your third option is probably Max Strus, Dean Wade, Karis LeVert, one of those guys. But especially Karis LeVert, who, it's like the meme where they said he spins a wheel, and it's like all these different NBA players, and like some nights it's Corey Brewer, the next night it's Michael Jordan. That is like the epitome of Karis LeVert. I want him to be consistent. Because I think obviously Cleveland could have made a couple more offseason moves. I think maybe, a Cam Johnson, a Dorian Finney-Smith, even trying to get Nicholas Claxton, using Strus as a piece. Those all would have been great moves to give them that help. But I also think the Cavs are a team. Allen on his best day to me is a walking 20 and 10. Mobley is also a guy who can give you 16, 10, and then 2 blocks, maybe a steal as well with perimeter game. Mitchell's a walking 27 and 5. Garland is probably a guy who can also give you 20 and 8 with 2 steals. These guys at their peak, as well as the fact that the Cavs, I think, are one of the few teams in the NBA that can beat you in 2 ways. They can either have high-pace offense, kind of like the Pacers or the Kings, but they can also beat you down low. They're one of the 2 teams that can do that. And if we remember, this is also a Cavs team that got wins against Milwaukee, got wins against Philadelphia the last season because they were able to play in 2 different styles and beat you at both. I think they have to commit to which one is going to be their bread and butter and then which one is going to be a secondary, or just combine them both, because if you have a team that can attack you from 2 different ways, 2 different angles, that's going to be very hard to beat. So I think in terms of most to prove, I think the Cavs have to prove they can just put it all together. I mean, you've gotten to the playoffs now for the first time since 2018 in Braun. Mitchell's your number 1 guy. You've got that camel off your back, and you kept the number 1 guy as well. He wants to be in Cleveland. Again, the first star to really say that, very adamantly since LeBron. But I think proving that they can take that next leap and really play to their potential, I think that's going to be very interesting to see, especially in the Eastern Conference. You've got the Knicks, you've got the Bucks, you've got Boston, right? You've got these teams that are kind of like the top 4, probably like Knicks, Bucks, Sixers, Celtics. But then that second layer, you've got Orlando, they've got KCP. But I still think the Cavs, if they play to their full potential, can definitely make a very deep run in the East.
As a Cavs fan, I think what people aren't realizing is that we were never healthy last season. And in the playoffs, we took obviously the Celtics didn't have Porzingis, but we didn't have Mitchell, we didn't have Allen, and that Game 5 in the fourth quarter, we were down by like 2 or 3, and Darius Garland was having a stinker. He shot like 3 for 19, and you're telling me our best player in the series, and we're only down by 3. But I think the Cavs are one of the teams that match up well, I think, against pretty much every team. Donovan Mitchell, like you said, he can be a 30-point scorer if he wants to. You got Jared Allen, you got Evan Mobley. We got a deep bench too. Karis LeVert, he might be 0-5 with 7 turnovers one night, and then he's 27 points. But I think if the Cavs are able to stay healthy this year, I think people are going to realize, okay, this team can actually do something. Obviously, the Magic taking the Cavs to 7 wasn't what everyone thought was going to happen. I think if Allen was healthy that whole series, I don't think it would have gone that far. But Evan Mobley's only getting better. He's still 22. Darius Garland's still 23, 24. So the Cavs have a mix of youth and also a lot of veteran presence as well. So I think if the Cavs can stay healthy, Darius Garland went through a lot last season, and he was still a 20-8 player. He lost 10 pounds. He missed months with a jaw injury. His grandma died, and he still came, and he still showed up every night. So I think if we can get a full season of him, get back to the All-Star level, 22-9, maybe break that double-double threshold that he's been flirting with a lot. I think the Cavs are sneaky to do something.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to that before we transition into some picks for NBA awards, it wasn't that streak from like after or right before All-Star break where like the Cavs were like 17-3 or something crazy like that, 20-5. They were the best team in the league when fully healthy. And I feel like they're kind of a smaller market team, so they kind of fly under the radar a little bit. But I've always been a firm believer that, and I'm saying this as a Boston fan, I think if there's any team that can beat us just by matching up with us, it's the Cleveland Cavaliers. They can take out Porzingis with Mobley. We got Jared Sellinger. They got Jared Allen. That's like saying, they got KD, but we got Jaden McDaniels. Like it's one of those types of matchups. Not Jared Sellinger, excuse me, Patrick Tillman. Like he's good, but he's not doing anything against Jared Allen. If we're just being honest. And again, you've got Mitchell, you've got Garland, you've got that 1-2 punch. Obviously, Drew Holiday makes things different, but Holiday can only guard one of them. And I also just think Garland's faster than Holiday too. And I don't see Derek White stopping Donovan Mitchell. So that's a very interesting series. It really just comes down to wing play and how good Karis LeVert plays, and if he can stop the bleeding that's going to come on the other side from Tatum and Brown. I've always been interested to see the Cavs fully healthy. I'm hoping we get to see that this season. Transitioning to season award picks, NBA award picks, and I feel like this is always the most – it's such a gander to really try to guess this because we don't really have anything to go off of. But and you guys can kind of decide how to do this because we're going to do MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, and then most improved player. I guess starting quickly with MVP, who's your front runner, guys?
I'll let Dano go first.
I think for mine, it'd probably be Nikola Jokic. It's just simple. He's one of the best players in the world. He's been, I believe, top 3 in MVP voting for a while. And I think he's going to continue that. And I think if he can carry this Nuggets team to a playoffs, possibly to the NBA Finals, he's going to win MVP. In terms of Defensive Player of the Year, I'll just go MVP, Defensive Player of the Year right now. Defensive Player of the Year, I think my vote is Jaden McDaniels. And that's a hot take, but I think he is a solid player. He has that. He's I don't know if you guys saw a playoffs performance besides the NBA Finals.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. He absolutely played incredible defense, and if he can continue that on within the regular season and within the playoffs, he's gonna win Defensive Player of the Year.
Jaden McDaniels, DPOY. That is definitely a hot take. I'm gonna respond to that, but I'm gonna go with you, Royce. Just give us your MVP and DPOY.
Like I was saying with the Bucks, they have a lot to prove. I think if Giannis can stay healthy, and they can get back to that top 2 seed, I think Giannis is the MVP. But I also think this is finally Luka's year. I know he's been the betting favorite since maybe 2020. I thought he deserved it last year as well. I think it was a bit of a shock for Jokic to win again. But yeah, I think it's a toss up between them two. I don't think it's going to go to the best player on the best team. Sort of like a Russ MVP. But for Defensive Player of the Year, I think it's hard not to say Wemby. We all saw that quote that he said about Gobert. He goes that he can have this one because the next 10 are mine. And I full-heartedly believe that. This dude averaged close to 4 blocks in his rookie season. We saw that the Spurs were near bottom 5 defense without him, and they were like a top 10 defense with him. I think he's only going to get faster, and he's only going to get stronger on the perimeter. I think it's hard to look at Wemby and say he's not going to be better than he was last year, and he was already an elite shot blocker.
Yeah, I feel like I honestly forgot Wemby existed. Not because my mind was on Bam Adebayo because it's interesting, and this is, a completely different pod topic. When I think of Defensive Player of the Year, I feel like the way we kind of view the award is a little bit skewed. I think people look at Gobert especially like shot blocker, paint protector. Obviously, this whole rim protector versus shot blocker debate as well that's been going on. I think I look at it, though, as how good can you guard all 5 positions? And I feel like somebody that's really been slept on, I don't know if it's his year or not, but somebody that's really been slept on in this debate for like the last few years, I think it's Bam Adebayo. I think for a center, his ability to defend the perimeter is very elite. He's one of the better paint protectors in the league. He can get the blocks, he can get the steals, and his impact. He's one of the few bigs in the league that is not cooked if you were to switch a Kyrie or a Fox, a Curry, a Shai. If you switch Bam on you, you're getting a big body compared to most guards. And the one thing about Wembanyama, I think he's so long sometimes, I don't know how he can stop shifty guards from getting to the cup. He can get the block, but when you have somebody like Ja Morant, we saw this when the Spurs played the Grizzlies last year. Ja Morant was able to blow by Wembanyama. He was able to get his points. Now, obviously, it's going to be very hard. Wemby is only going to get so much better, especially with the incredible run he had in the Olympics. And honestly, France could have won that game if it wasn't for Curry securing his legacy as a top 5 player. That's also another discussion. But I think Bam is one of those guys who's really flown under the radar in terms of his ability. So I think he could definitely get runner-up, but it's really hard for me to discount a guy in Wembanyama who's a walking quadruple-double when he feels like it, just based on genetics alone, on top of how good he's going to get at the game. You've got Chris Paul now, you've got Stephon Castle, you've got pieces. So I'm gonna go with your pick, Royce Wemby, but I'm gonna say my dark horse for it is definitely Bam Adebayo. And then MVP, real quick. I got 2 options here. I don't know why I have this crazy feeling, and we've been talking about this off air. I'm gonna just say it on here. My at least dark horse. I'm gonna get my regular MVP pick out the way. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be Luka. It's gonna be between Luka, Shai, and Giannis. I think that SGA, unfortunately, his game is not flashy enough for voters to really pay attention to it. Like he doesn't have the spectacle of Giannis or Luka in terms of getting like, oh yeah, this guy's dominating. Because SGA, you'll watch him play, it's like, oh, he's playing calmly, and then you look at the stat sheet, he's got 33 on 60% from the field. But it almost you don't feel like you're watching somebody go for 33 for 60% from the field because of how he's getting it. It's very ethical, it's very efficient. Right, yeah. But I think to viewers and maybe voters for MVP, they're gonna look at more, Luka step back 3, logo 3, doing the mellow on Minnesota. They're gonna look at those things. They're gonna look at run and dunk Giannis. They're gonna look at all the posters. They're gonna look at the things that stand out. And Jokic is just such an anomaly at center. Those guys are gonna get more attention. My dark horse for MVP though, Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown, not hear me out.
These Celtics agendas have to stop.
Hear me out. You've got a guy in Jaylen Brown who was snubbed from the Olympics. You've got a guy in Jaylen Brown who was snubbed from Finals MVP. You have a Jaylen Brown, at least from what I've been seeing in preseason, who has a left hand now. You got a guy in Jaylen Brown who's an improved playmaker, who fixed his finishing ability. His shot selection is better. I think the number one thing Jaylen Brown for me had to work on was his composure. And even though the Dallas Mavericks were a much easier team, because if we're being honest, Boston, as much as cool as it was to get the ring, I didn't care about it in 2 weeks. And the reason I say that is because Cavs, I believe that was our first round team. Cavs were injured. Second, see, that's the thing. I forgot who we played because it was so forgettable to an extent.
I think second round
Cavs,
was
Pacers, Mavs.
Pacers, and then
yeah. Who was the first round? Who was the first round for Boston?
Heat.
Yeah. Wounded Warrior Project Miami Heat, who had Tyler Hero. I think it was no Jimmy. It was Jaime Jaquez and Tyler Hero playing rec ball against the Monstars. It wasn't fulfilling to me because we proved we were the best team in the league, but we didn't do it when everybody was healthy, and I hope we do that this year. I digress.
Yeah.
I'm saying Jaylen Brown, the number one thing he had to work on for me was his composure, and I think Mavs Game 3, when we almost choked, he showed composure. He made the right plays, and in that was the same Game 3 where he was going off. He kept us in the game. He kept us going forward, and honestly picked up for some of Jason Tatum's offensive slack. I think, and we're going to get into this before we wrap up, standings and playoff predictions, just to segue into that. Boston's going to go 68-14. Jaylen Brown's – I'm telling you, Boston's going to go 68-14. Jaylen Brown's going to give you 28, 8-8. He's winning MVP. That's my dark horse. Jaylen Brown is my dark horse for MVP. But just to wrap up the picks real quick, most improved player of the year, Royce, let's starting with you. Who do you think is going to get that?
I don't want to sound biased, but I think it's going to go to Evan Mobley. I think this season there's a lot of great candidates. I don't think there's a runaway. I know a lot of people saying Jonathan Kuminga because of the expanded role he's going to get.
Really?
Huh. But yeah, I think Mobley's finally going to take that leap. We're seeing what he's doing in preseason. The shot looks great. He's going to prove to people that he's still top 10 defender in the league. Yeah, I think he's only getting stronger. He's going to become a better rebounder. And the Cavs are really banking on that. We didn't make too many moves, so for him to won't be an all-star. The front court's really stacked in the East, but to at least be that kind of 17 and 10 guy, and be the legitimate second option on some nights.
I think it's going to be LaMelo Ball, simply just from the fact that he's always coming out with injury. But I think of the fact that we've seen how he was before injuries, and if he can continue to be like that, I know ankle injuries has been a very key factor for him, sadly. But if he can stay healthy throughout the whole season, he's gonna be put up at least a good 20 per game, 20 points per game, and lead that Hornets team possibly maybe to a play-in. I mean, Hornets aren't the greatest team right now, but if LaMelo can lead that team by himself, which maybe who knows, he can, maybe he can't, but yeah, I truly believe that he's going to get most improved player simply on the fact of his stats after an ankle injury, and I believe he's going to play well this season, which that's enough. In my opinion.
That's an underrated pick.
Yeah, I disagree with you. I don't think the Hornets are going to touch the playoffs, but
it's a maybe.
You
really think so? No, but
it really just depends on Brandon Miller's leap, honestly, because I don't even think the Hornets have a bad squad. They just don't have a star yet. But I actually think LaMelo Ball's an underrated pick. I was going to go with Cam Thomas just because I feel like he's like the only guy left in Brooklyn, man. You went to a team that had, Harden, Kyrie, had KD. They all left. Now you got Bridges there. You're the only guy. He's like the last of the Mohicans in Brooklyn. I think the green light. We all know Cam Thomas. He's a shot chucker, but not in a bad way. I think he understands the pace of the game really well. The only thing he has to work on sometimes is forcing his shot. And I think being the first option is going to give him a chance to get those reps to make more mistakes and really hone in on his craft. So I'm going to go with Cam Thomas. It's Cam Thomas. I don't know why I'm getting confused because it's Cam Johnson and Cam Thomas on the team.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know. I'm getting those confused a little bit. Yeah, Cam Thomas. Yeah, it's Cam Thomas, right? I'm just making sure I'm getting it right.
Yeah,
No, it's Cam Thomas.
Okay, yeah, Cam Thomas is my pick, and then matter of fact, I'm gonna just Google this real quick. I'm nervous. You make an
most improved player is crazy.
Right, like you make I make a pick, and I got the player's name. It's Cam Thomas, right? Okay, it is Cam Thomas. All right, I had to pull out the cellular real quick. I was just like, hey, I cannot get first episode of a basketball podcast. I get a player's name wrong. That would not be a good look. But I'm gonna go with Cam Thomas for most improved player. And then finally, before we get into some standings and then wrap it up, how do you guys see Rookie of the Year going? I know me and Royce see it eye to eye, so I'm gonna go to Daniel first, and then I'll let Royce push agendas.
Within Rookie of the Years right now, I mean, my number one is going to be Reed Shepherd's. I just like how he's been playing in the summer league. Bro has played fantastic, and even in the preseason, he's put up some solid numbers. I think he put up 17 points about a week ago against the Thunder, I believe. But he's been solid as a player, and I believe if he comes off the bench, which he most likely will, he's going to be a solid player, and I think he's going to put up good numbers. For my dark horse, it's dark horse for a reason because it is biased, but Dalton Connect. I mean, we've seen how he's playing, how he played against Phoenix, and has just been playing overall in the summer league in the preseason. If he can continue to do that and push through within the regular season and possibly in the playoffs, he's gonna win Rookie of the Year. But as I said, as a dark horse, just because I believe it's biased, and we'll see how the season goes on, how JJ Redick uses him. But yeah, I mean overall within Reed Shepherd's and that agenda, like I said, I feel like he's gonna put up great numbers. He might even just become a starter eventually. I mean, we've seen how he has been at Kentucky, and yeah, I truly believe he's gonna win Rookie of the Year.
Okay. Yeah, for me and Joaquin see this eye to eye. The Rookie of the Year is gonna be Zach Edey. Not that I think Zach Edey is the best player in this draft. I think he's best set up to win. If you look at guys like Sarr or Reese Shea or Reed Shepherd, like Daniel was just saying, that Reed's going to come off the bench. Sarr's still got Kuzma on that team, Poole's on that team. They got Brogdon now. He's got a bunch of guys in front of him. We saw what he did in Summer League. He put up a lot of stinkers. All he could do was rebound the ball. And same with Reese Shea. Jalen Johnson, Trae Young, they're going to be in front of him. But with Zach Edey, he comes into a NBA championship caliber team that isn't going to ask him to do too much. He's going to have to rebound the ball. Like he's the only player on that team that can rebound the ball. No one else is going to be grabbing those boards. Jaren Jackson Jr., waist of height, 6'10", he's averaging 5 rebounds. Edey's gonna snatch those every game. He's improving we saw in his last couple of years at Purdue, he's becoming a better player, moving his feet. He can block a lot of shots. We've seen that in preseason. He just had a 3-block game. He's just going to have to catch lobs, putbacks. And that's, at worst case scenario, he's going to average 12 and 8. And I think he's going to fit perfectly into the Grizzly system.
Yeah, and just to springboard off of what Royce was saying, I think, like you said, compared to Sarr, Riche, Shepherd, Connect, I think all those guys are guys that can develop as their game progresses season to season. I think Edey, not only is he in the most win now position, he's the most capable player of making a win now impact. Jared Jackson at the 5 against AD, he was getting cooked out there. Let's be honest. He was not being the guy who has to play 4 and 5 going back and forth. And this is even true with Anthony Davis. That gets tiring. That's why, Miami drafted Kevon Ware Jr., to try to take some of that stress off Bam playing the 5 and the 4 all the time. You need that second guy who can come in. It was Steven Adams and Brandon Clark before. Adams got injured. Clark is sometimes injury prone. You got a guy in Zach Edey who's also very reliable, who can play make from time to time, who can get you 23 and 15 and 2 blocks, who can really, like you said, Royce, he's going to snatch up all those rebounds, and he's going to provide a different fold into this game of Memphis. Now Morant has a great pick and roll partner who's actually a threat, can fade back, lob threat. You've got a lot of options for Ja. You've got a lot of things for Bane as well. So I think Zach Edey, he's just the guy that is going to the most win now situation, whose game, while his ceiling as a player might already be reached, his ceiling is like a more athletic Zubac, and that's a great thing a lot of teams don't have. But especially a team that's already missing a big, that's going to be huge because it's not like a Klingon situation in Portland where you've already got Robert Williams III, you've already got DeAndre Ayton. Klingon is going to have to, and Klingon, by the way, 24 minutes, 20 rebounds, 14 points, 2 blocks last night. That's great stuff. He's going to have to fight for those reps a little bit more, though, as a rookie. Edey, he can come in there and join the starting lineup just based on the fact Memphis doesn't have anybody. So it's just going to be the rookie that has the most minutes. I believe it's going to be Edey. And then on top of that, he's the rookie that is going to have the most easy time making a win now impact. So me and Royce, we see the same vision. Zach Edey, Rookie of the Year. I think that's the easy. I think that's the safest pick, honestly. I was surprised how high he went in the draft, but that's a different discussion. Final thing.
Maybe, just Memphis probably just sees something in him.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and then final thing here for us, and I'm kind of writing everything down. I don't know if you can see it. It's bad writing, but it's inverted. But I got everybody's predictions written down. Obviously, we'll get Marcus and Samajai's next week. Final predictions. Anything you guys want to predict? Standings, playoff series, NBA champs. I know it's super early to call this stuff, but any last major predictions before we wrap up?
I think a dark horse prediction. The Knicks beat the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's a dark horse for a reason. Do I think it's gonna happen? No. I'm saying that as a Laker fan too, but that'd be very. I mean, Cat with Porzingis. That's gonna be a great matchup. And just overall Brunson, his playmaking ability, possibly getting past Derek White, who's a great defender. But overall, that's a hot take on mine, and that'd probably be Knicks, maybe Knicks Timberwolves or Knicks Thunder in the finals. That's a hot take of it. But if we look at real, probably it's gonna be Celtics and then maybe OKC or the Nuggets. I don't think the Timberwolves are gonna make it past the semifinals this year, simply based on the fact that they lost Cat, and there's already other good big men in the West that I feel like are just gonna roll through. They're gonna be a good team, but they're not gonna in playoffs. They're not gonna make it as far as they did last year.
Okay.
I think for me, I just want to see something new happen. I think the last couple of years, NBA is just getting so predictable. The Celtics steamrolled to the championship. The Nuggets, they had no one in their way. Even the MVPs. I think I just want to see something new. Just bring some excitement back to the NBA.
Man. I'm gonna throw out a wild finals matchup here. And I gotta throw away my Boston Celtics bias for this because I would love to see us repeat. But in terms of seeing something new, actually I'm gonna go to conference finals here. Conference finals is going to be Pacers-Knicks rematch. That's gonna be the East. If I'm just to take I'm gonna take Boston out of the equation here. Pacers-Knicks rematch. West is going to be Thunder and Pelicans. Pelican. No. Pelicans got DeJounte Murray. If CJ can stop being a playoff dropper, Zion and Brandon stay healthy. You've got Valanciunas left, but they've got who did they got somebody playing center.
They're playing Trey Murphy at center.
He's cooked. He's cooked.
And we don't even know if BI is going to be a Pelican.
Oh, that's I forgot about that. Actually, okay, no, scratch that. Then who did I say? I said Thunder. Pelicans. No. Western Conference Finals. It is kind of predictable though. I don't know outside of the Knicks and the Sixers. I don't think anybody in the West had that big splash that was really different though. But what I say in the East, Knicks Pacers rematch or one of them versus Boston in a rematch, and then West I'm gonna go Thunder are a lock. I really don't. I feel like everybody's gonna be in a dogfight for second. I'm gonna go Thunder Memphis. I'm gonna go Thunder Memphis Western Conference Finals. I think Ja was having a return to form when he came back and then had the shoulder injury. Desmond Bane's only going to be a better shooter. You got G.G. Jackson off the bench. Memphis has a lot of great pieces. You got Marcus Smart. You got Edie. You've got Jaren Jackson. You still got Clark. They've got pieces to make a deep run. They just haven't been healthy since they lost to Golden State. And I think Ja's going to have a lot to prove. I think he's going to be locked in the whole season. I don't know if there's a guy in the West outside of Caruso as a perimeter defender who's actually going to be able to stop John Morant. I look at the rest of the West. Luka's not a perimeter defender. Mavs don't really have that perimeter defender guy. Dinwiddie can defend sometimes. He's not that guy. Clay's not going to be put on John Morant most of the time. Kings lost Davion Mitchell. There are guys outside of Caruso who are perimeter defenders. Most of those guys are in the East. And I don't really see anybody really being able to stop John Morant and Desmond Bane. I think Dylan Brooks was that kind of third option who should not have been given that much responsibility on the offensive end. He took away a lot of their steam. Now you've got Edie, you've got other pieces. So I'm going to go with OKC versus Memphis, kind of like a throwback Western Conference Finals. And then Finals, I want to take Boston out of the equation so bad, just as an NBA fan to see something different, but it's really hard to when Boston's only continuing to get better. The bench. I'm sad we lost Lonnie Walker right before we shot this episode. Lonnie Walker was let go. You know, that's a whole other episode about league expansion, but I'm going to go Celtics Grizzlies finals. That's a very controversial opinion. Either Celtics Thunder or Celtics Grizzlies. I feel like Memphis is young enough to do it, to get back there, but I also think they're more experienced. I think Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson down low are going to be hard for teams to beat. As we mentioned, Minnesota got smaller. And I think Minnesota can still make a run. You've got Dylan Ham off the bench. You've got Dante, which adds perimeter defense as well. And you've also got Julius Randle. But Julius Randle's a playoff dropper. Ant ran out of steam. Naz Reid's either going to have to be like Andre Kirilenko with a post game and like just shoot much better. That's going to have to be Naz Reid. He's going to have to take that first option, not first option, second option, but definitely like third, fourth option. Because now without Cat, Minnesota now I think has a collection of players. They don't have a 1-2 punch. And that's going to be interesting to see how that collection merges together. So Minnesota can still do it. But yeah, I'm going to write these down. I'm going to just lock it in. I'm going to go Memphis, OKC, Western Conference Finals. And then East, we're going to go Knicks / Pacers versus Boston. Those are my Western and Eastern Conference Finals predictions. I think the Memphis one is really controversial, but I think people are going to be shocked how much Zach Edey brings back a traditional big man being important. I think big men these days are being so used to stretch the floor out. Oh, we need you to shoot threes. Oh, we need you to do this. But the paint's wide open. You can run 5 out, but the paint's going to be open. And I think Zach Edey is going to clean up anything that's open in the paint, especially with the pick and roll with Morant. I think the Spurs are like a couple of pieces away from being able to do that with Wembanyama, but I don't think Wembanyama's enough. I was originally going to say Spurs are a Western Conference semifinals team with Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes, but I saw some preseason footage. I saw Harrison Barnes like completely miss Wemby in the paint. I was like, yeah, I get it. I saw this man go 5 of 22 in between Game 5 and 7 of the 2016 NBA Finals, and 70% of those were wide open shots. I am way too familiar with the Harrison Barnes experience. He was the Cavs 6th man. That's what Harrison Barnes was.
The thing with the Grizzlies, I think it might be asking too much for them to go that far with Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja and Edey being their first season, especially with the injuries that they had. Mm-hmm. Not only to integrate this rookie into this high caliber offense or this high caliber team, also just to get your legs back. So I wouldn't be shocked if they did make a run, but I think that their expectations won't be as high this season as they will be, for the next few years.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense, and I think they also probably, with their picks, with their talent, they probably could still land a high caliber player as well. But that pretty much does it for us. We covered, the past season a little bit. We covered best moves of the offseason. We covered standings, rookie of the year predictions, some hot takes in there. I was pushing Boston agenda. That is going to be something that's very common. Once we get Samajai here and also a fellow Black Boston Celtics fan, there's going to be a lot of Celtics, and I'm just here to let y'all. We might be like the only two that exist. We might be the only. Why are balloons going off right now? I don't know. That was weird. Championship parade early.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, but we might be the only two but two Black Boston Celtics fans. A lot of agendas are going to be pushed, but that's what you can expect from us. A fun time, but a lot of great analysis. Obviously, Marcus and Samajai weren't here, but we got Royce Chan. We've got Daniel Robles. Pleasure to do this with you guys. Anything you guys want to say before the episode ends?
For those who are going to be tuning in, thank you guys. And appreciate your time.
Yeah, I'm just excited to get it going.
Exactly, man. Jaylen Brown Finals MVP. Lock it in. And regular season, lock it in. No, okay, I'm joking. But again, if you are just now joining us for the first episode of BoxInOne, thank you. Watch us on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, wherever you get your podcasts, and we will see you all in the next episode. Take care.